Welcome, welcome. So today on the show, as you may have guessed from my little intro, I'll be talking about Star Wars games. With the movie series going over 35 years strong now, as a gamer, you've probably at least played one Star Wars game. With the Star Wars name being so big, of course there's going to be merchandise for this. I mean, you've got comic books, novels, cartoon series, and video games. The Star Wars universe is pretty large, so usually game devs would either choose the movie plot to follow, or make their own stories. Star Wars games as a whole have probably been the most successful movie games out there. So today on the show, I'll be talking about 3D Star Wars games that I remember from my childhood. The definitive point for me and many others was Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, or Pod Racer as it's usually called. This game was usually bundled with the... Countless people have played this game, and it's actually a pretty decent racer. You get to play as several different races from the Star Wars genre, different pods, each with their own upgrades. You've got different worlds, you've got different track hazards. I mean, the track hazards were out the wazoo. I mean, they were sometimes really difficult. And there's no blue shells, so when you're behind, you're probably going to have to, really speed up to actually get into the front. And also the multiplayer was pretty fun with another person. This game actually transitioned even to the arcades with its own arcade machine. By far the best part about the arcade machine was the fact that you could actually thrust with the thruster sticks and actually feel like you're in the movie. The next thing for me in my childhood was Rogue Squadron. You've got 3 Rogue Squadron games. You got 1 for the Nintendo 64 and 2 for the GameCube. With these, you can really live the dream from the Star Wars movies. I mean, you've got all sorts of different fighters from the movie series. You've got your X-Wing, A-Wing, Y-Wing, and in some of the other games, for the GameCube, you could even, fight in TIE Fighters, use the Millennium Falcon, and the game did a great job of going through classic scenes from the movies. I mean, you've got Beggar's Canyon, you've got the Death Star Trench, which of course is the most iconic scene in the movie. You even get to do the whole Hoth battle, tripping the walkers over. The most memorable thing about the game series was how much dedication the developers put into the game experience, and all the little extras they put in. If you took the time, you could unlock the Naboo fighter. There was a flying Buick you could use if you had a cheat code, and by far the best extra was tacked into the 3rd Rogue Squadron game, where if you used a cheat code, you could unlock the Atari game, which in itself is actually a lot of fun. All the games were a pretty decent challenge, and as a kid, these were really fun when visiting friends. So now let's move over to the Jedi Knight series. The Jedi Knight series started with originally Dark Forces 1 and Dark Forces 2. The ones that I played and the ones that you most likely heard about would be Jedi Outcast and Jedi Knight. I played Jedi Outcast on the GameCube, and I played Jedi Academy on the PC. These games really let you take the role of the Jedi to a new level. They were a lot of fun, you got force powers to play with, the lightsabers were done perfectly, and if you wanted to have some fun you could even use blasters. The storyline did stay out of the movies, but the series did have its own plot which did carry out between the different games. The game did try to have a lot of customizable options. I mean, if you wanted to, you could go down the dark or light path of the Force, you could customize your lightsaber, you could choose your own force powers, and you could choose your own gender and appearance. This of course immersed you into the game and gave you a bit of a more RPG feel to it. There was multiplayer in the games, but it just never really hooked for me. I'd say they're pretty reasonable. Now, if you never had a Nintendo 64 or a GameCube, and you remember playing some kind of flight simulator from Star Wars, it's probably the Starfighter or Jedi Starfighter series that you remember. These games focused a lot more on the movies and expanded the first and second movies. Mainly they concentrated around the Naboo and Geonosis fights, where you got to use different ships. They also took it a step further, where you could actually use force powers inside of your ship to actually fight. Now we come up to the cult classic Battlefront. In the end, Battlefront had 2 games, the original and a sequel. To get the best understanding of Battlefront, think Battlefield 1942, but with Star Wars flair. The shining feature of these games is that you got to have large-scale battles on huge maps. On the PC this has been done before, but on the consoles this was really something big at its time. You got to choose from different classes, ride different vehicles, and the scale was huge on this. For me, I always remember playing these games in LAN cafes, actually. Me and my friends would play these games, and usually play in a team, and these would actually be really fun games to play. And if you've ever played any of these games, you probably already know why it's a cult classic. If you're a big Star Wars fan and you love the lore and you really want to put yourself in, what would be the most ideal game for you? It's probably an MMO. And thus, Star Wars Galaxies was born. When this game was first announced, it had huge expectations. This is the same team that worked on EverQuest, and since they have such a huge fan base for the MMO even before the game came out, there was a lot of expectations. The game took place between the 4th and 5th movies, which in itself is a perfect setting for the MMO. The game had 10 different planets to visit, with lots of lore, and you could even visit a lot of characters from the movies. The MMO itself had a large economy, vehicles you could use for travel, it had PvP and PvE, and it had a lot of roleplay battles. A friend of mine really got hooked into this game, and the thing that he loved the most was actually civilian-based roleplay. Over the game's many years, 3 expansion packs were eventually released. These games added space combat, added more races, more professions, another planet, and a lot more content. The biggest gripe for me with this game was the Jedi class. When you think about it, most people usually want to play the Jedi. I mean, they want to feel powerful, they want to wield a lightsaber. The game developers realized this and they tried to make a way so that players wouldn't instinctively go for the Jedi. So what they did is they involved permadeath. If you died 3 times, you're dead forever. Plus, it took ages and just so many quest lines just for you to actually become a Jedi. This created a lot of hate for the game at its time, but eventually they tweaked it a little bit, and with the community's help, they eventually got over the whole Jedi problem. In the end, the game was shut down in 2011, and to commemorate it, they had a huge farewell battle. So next on the list is Knights of the Old Republic. This game series had 2 role-playing games and 1 MMO. The MMO did come out after Galaxies and did kind of fill the void that Galaxies had left over. The story for these games happens before any of the movies and was developed by BioWare. The original 2 role-playing games had a few classes with upgrades and force powers. Dialogue played a huge role in these 2 games. You had different choices that you could choose from, and this is the game that really started off the dialogue wheel. Many of these games you could use Jedi mind tricks to actually get people to go your way, and your gender and skills actually gave different options in dialogue. These options that you choose would actually build into your whole dark or light side that you're trying to develop. Your appearances would change. When you think about it, where did Mass Effect get this from? Another big plus was the whole companions thing. This also was developed in Mass Effect further. So now we come down to the MMO. Since the first 2 games paved a great backdrop for the games, it should have been pretty easy for them to actually move into it. BioWare set up a huge hype and ad campaign, and the open beta actually overwhelmed the servers when that first came out. A lot of the ideas that the first 2 games put out did carry over through to the MMO. You had your dialogue in multiplayer, the game really pulled you in terms of its atmosphere, and overall I'd say the game experience was pretty dang good. And boy were those jumping puzzles fun. The biggest problem with this game is probably the endgame material. Once you reach the end, there's not really much for you to do. And after the first month of this game's release, there was a huge number of people actually dropping out of the MMO. It also didn't help that the game sent out these really creepy emails telling you to return back to the MMO. And then within the first year of launch, they went into the whole free-to-play scheme. This could be due to the number of people dropping off the game, or they felt that that would have been a better kind of scheme for the MMO. So onwards we go to Empire at War. So Empire at War is your kind of post-millennium stab at a Star Wars RTS. The game's placed between the 3rd and 4th movie, and actually had 1 expansion pack as well. The game was actually divided into 2 kind of aspects. You had your, ground-based fighting RTS, and you had a galactic overview. The single player was great, you had optional missions to choose from, you could actually play as both sides in certain missions. You had your units on the ground sometimes with your units, and heck, you have Vader. You can just strangle everybody if you wanted to. The galactic overview was really memorable. You could actually take over the galaxy 1 planet at a time. Use spies to actually gain more technology, and you could actually gain bonuses from the planet's own natural resources. The more you invested into actually gaining more planets, the more units you'd actually get. It was a brilliant Star Wars RTS. And the best part about the expansion pack was that it actually let you control this unit called the Eclipse, which had a huge devastating beam which you could actually blow up other starships with. So next we come up to Star Wars Republic Commando. This game was kind of a squad-based shooter. It was based around the 2nd movie where you'd be in a first-person view. The best way to think about it is, let's say, SWAT 4 or Rainbow Six, but with Star Wars incorporated into it. The game was squad-based, and you had tactical commands for breaching, cover, and flanking. The game overall was a really great tactical shooter, and it has a lot of challenging scenarios. One feature that I definitely have to highlight is the fact that it really tried to put you into the role of the commando. The game's HUD really played into that. I mean, it even had its own little wiper system just to go across the screen so you felt like you were actually a commando. If you're a younger Star Wars fan, then it's probably Lego Star Wars that you actually know these days. These games took a real light-hearted approach to the movies. These games have gone over every single movie now, and were mainly tuned for kids. It was a perfect mix of Lego fun with classic Star Wars scenes. You had little Lego puzzles to figure out. When you even killed enemies, they kind of burst into little Lego bits. Where have I seen this before? Oh no, it's just like No More Heroes. The game did have both ground fighting and vehicle sequences, and overall it was done in a really fun and friendly family style. So now let's flip over to something a little more dark from the kids' games, with The Force Unleashed. This game concentrated on Vader's secret apprentice, Starkiller. It focused on a more darker side of the Force. The game was developed with a new plot between the third and fourth movies, where Vader wants to use Starkiller to kill the Emperor. As the game goes on, the Emperor finds out, and then Vader's commanded to kill Starkiller. The plot's mainly built around this. Biggest fault with this game series is the fact that you become a huge, overpowered killing machine. The game tries to tweak difficulty with this by tossing in a lot more enemies, but it kind of falls short. I mean, the game was also littered with a lot of bugs, which kind of detracted from the experience. And another problem was the game kind of felt like a grind in the second game. But oh my god, the promotional material for this game was crazy. I mean, it had you pulling a Star Destroyer out of space. Just take a look at this. As you may have heard recently, Disney acquired LucasArts for a pretty large sum. Since then, Raven, the game company which actually developed the Jedi Knight series, has released the source code for their games. So you may ask, well, why would Raven go ahead and do something like that? Well, Disney's gone ahead and shut down LucasArts. LucasArts, as you may know, is famous for their classic point-and-click games. I mean, Monkey Island, Grim Fandango, Maniac Mansion, Sam & Max. How could you kill a giant like that? Disney, why did you kill my childhood? Now, since LucasArts has been shut down, games that were in production already, like Star Wars 1313, are now up in the air. This game had a lot of hype before it was shut down, and it's kind of sad to see that it's gone down the drain. And for all you Battlefront fans out there, I'm sorry, but I really doubt there's going to be another game. Ever since LucasArts was shut down by Disney, the game series doesn't look that great. So it's probably going to be a pretty rough future until the next movie comes out. So till then, we're probably just going to have to stick with the classic games for now. I hope you enjoyed the Star Wars trip, and if you think I forgot a game, please let me know. And as always, remember to keep it fresh.